Good morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 10:02, and we're just going to have to deal with some challenges. Technology. This is the new format. I missed the last meeting. Heidi, thank you very much for running the meeting.
This conference is being recorded. Only the main conference is recorded.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I just wanted to, again, welcome 3 new board members, Wendy, Jerry, and Kathy. And we're going to have just a little bit of a different format. I'm going to have an attendance. Shelley's going to help me so that we know each board member. Some of them are on camera and some of them are on the conference call. And then for voting, I think Ian probably did a great job in just asking Shelley to do a roll call when we're going to do a vote, and that way we are clear who is voting in favor of or against or not. So, as I said, the meeting is called to order. The next item on the agenda is actually Shelley, can you read the attendance?
Sure. The roll call. Sherry Abrams.
Present.
Wendy Clark. Heidi Dillinger.
Here.
Ann Foley.
Here.
Ellie Gosselin.
Here.
Jim Hodges.
Here.
Catherine McKinnon.
Here.
Ella Mascara-Bruno.
Here.
George Perez.
Here.
Franklin Perry.
Present.
Sarah Sanders.
Here.
Gary Smith. One just joined. Yes, Allison Murphy. Christopher Bates.
Here.
Wendell Thames. Glenn, it looks like you're on the webcam, but you haven't called in. You need to call into the conference line as a host so we can hear you. And Carla Lyle.
Here. Thank you, Shelley. It seems like I'm back in high school or grammar school with attendance. But anyway, the next item on the agenda is public comments. And again, Shelley, I'm going to ask you to do whatever you need to do.
Sure. I just want to remind everyone that we are recording the meeting. So if you can please identify yourself before you vote or before you speak. And to the public, if there are any, if you'd like to provide a comment, you'll be prompted to press 10 on your phone.
This conference is now in question and answer mode. To alert the speaker that you have a question, press 1, then 0. Each question will be asked in the order it was received.
If you'd like to provide a comment, please press 10 on your phone now, and your request will be placed in a queue and unmuted in the order received. To ensure that everyone who wishes to speak has the opportunity, we're going to limit the comments to 3 minutes. So you can press 10 now. Before providing your comment, please state your name and your company affiliation. With no public comments, Commissioner, I turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Shelley. Next item on the agenda is the report of our CEO, Executive Director.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Mascara-Bruno. Good morning, everybody. We are all dealing with the COVID crisis in different ways. The health crisis has touched our lives and the lives of those around us in incredible ways. The economic impact, in addition to the health crisis, continues to unfold. And any recovery from the immediate shutdown of most industries is a lengthy and uncertain proposition, and the support of the federal government is still evolving. Through all of this, CHFA has stayed open for business with the able assistance of many individuals. To name a few, the IT department deserves special mention here today because they were able to put out 70 laptops and 20 iPads into circulation, increasing our telework capacity by 300% in just over 3 weeks. In addition to expanding our telework capacity, the IT department also has been working diligently to ensure that we actually have secure network capabilities as well as speed not being compromised and such like that, which has been challenging. Another special shout out goes out to our multifamily finance and legal departments who have worked tirelessly to create a program designed to provide relief to our multifamily borrowers from loan payments. The consequence of their efforts is a temporary forbearance program that we're seeking the board's approval on this morning. Last but certainly not least, our employees have continued to care for the health of others, and they have contributed to a virtual fundraiser to benefit Food Share and the Connecticut Food Bank, raising over $3,000 to feed those who may need additional assistance at this time. Part of our job at CHFA has been to keep the development community and our borrowers and others informed. In order to do that, as you know, the information changes. It's changing daily. We've got executive orders coming out from the governor. We've got updates from the federal government. We've got other critical information that needs to be put out there. And so one of the first things we did was create a COVID-19 dedicated page on our website, which is something that gets updated practically every day as we have new information. We've continued to keep the lines of communication open in the last month. We've participated in a couple of different phone calls, one mediated by the Partnership for Strong Communities, another one that involved Fairfield County Housing Alliance, and we've been able to provide updates to all of our partners. Both Commissioner Mascara-Bruno and I spoke about our efforts collectively and individually to keep critical business functions going and address concerns of participants on the call. A range of topics were discussed, including changes CHFA has made to oversight of construction-related services for projects under construction, including inspections, monitoring activities of CHFA as well as our vendor to minimize the impact on residents, changes in our process and procedures to increase electronic communication, electronic approvals, so that we don't have to actually be there in person for certain kinds of activities. And we heard from the developers in terms of the impact that they're seeing on their construction and lease-up activities for projects that are in progress. And so we are monitoring all of that. We intend to have a follow-up discussion with DOH in the very near future so that we can continue to have these calls with the development and borrower community to keep them engaged and for us to understand what their issues are. A day after our last board meeting, Congress did enact the CARES Act, as I'm sure you know. It was a $2 trillion legislation that contained a number of provisions aimed at providing relief to individuals as well as businesses, state and local governments. However, we know the CARES Act was probably not enough, and so there are a number of other initiatives underway, and in particular, I can highlight that NCSHA, our trade organization, is advancing policy priorities specifically aimed at issues that we know HFAs are going to face with respect to our single-family services, who are going to be facing liquidity shortfalls as a result of forbearance policies that were established by the CARES Act. We also know that multifamily owners are going to be facing significant shortages of liquidity in terms of maintaining and operating their properties as renters struggle to catch up on missed payments over the next several months. In addition, there are priorities that are being advanced which include the expansion of the housing tax credit, increasing flexibility in the use of volume tax, as well as potentially some Fed-backed programs that would increase liquidity to housing bond issuers as the municipal bond market has gone through a fair amount of volatility and increasing credit spreads, which has been a source of concern. So I will end there. I will open it up to any questions you may have, or ready to move with the agenda, depending on what you prefer.
Thank you, Nandini. Any questions for Nandini? Okay.
Kayla?
Yes.
Hi, Tim Hodges. I just actually have one question, Nandini. One of the things that I've been thinking about and have had conversations with other not-for-profits is, and you kind of hit this point, which is there are a lot of people who are going to have some challenges. And one of the things that we talked about is the fact that there's a lot of misinformation out right now about people who either have, in terms of forbearance, as an example, our bank, in terms of mortgages, essentially we're putting it on the back end. But there are a lot of renters who may have the impression that rent has now been forgiven, as opposed to there being a period that they don't have to pay, a grace period, if you will. I'm wondering if CHFA and by extension DOH or maybe vice versa has thought about reaching out to some of the not-for-profit property owners about really what I would describe as education. I know that everyone's concerned about what's happening right now, but you can kind of see the wave coming where we're going to get to July 1st or August, whatever, and all of a sudden there's going to be this 3-month period that you have to pay, and people may not be prepared to do that. So I'm wondering if there are any efforts to kind of help educate renters about what's actually coming.
That's a great question, Tim. I will take that question under advisement. Certainly at the moment, we've been working hard to keep our the people that we deal with on sort of our borrowers informed. But that's not to say that CHFA couldn't take a stance in terms of being a source of information that is applicable to other constituencies like renters. So I will take that under advisement, and we'll discuss it with Commissioner Mosquera-Bruno.
Tim, and to your point, we did do a frequently asked questions, and it was, I think, Alisa, it was posted on the website, in the governor's website, right? And also at the DOH. We are working very closely with the Connecticut Fair Housing Center for them to do some education. And you're right, there has been a lot of questions about it, and we are trying to get to everybody just for them to understand that it's not a 3 months, that it's just a grace period for people can have a chance to get their unemployment check and being able to pay and make arrangements with landlords, but we are working on that. Lisa, do you want to add anything? I know that you guys were involved with that.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So I'd refer everyone to the ct.gov coronavirus website, where we have a document called Frequently Asked Questions, where every day or every time there is a change in the executive order guidance, we're trying to capture that in plain language. So please refer to that, because together with DOH, the Office of the Governor Legal Counsel did a very complete scrub of guidance on the rental questions that Tim is very right to raise, and that we know there is a lot of concern and discussion about. But I'd ask you to refer to that, and hopefully that language is helpful. We are trying to push that out best we can. In addition to that FAQ page, there's a chat bot on that site that answers questions. So if people go to the site asking about rent, hopefully they automatically get the right guidance there. And through DECV, there's considerable work ongoing to reach out through the Spanish language media with this information as well. And I know that our HUD Hartford field office has also pushed out the guidance about what this current period during which eviction is being held off until July, but reinforcing that it is a tenant's obligation to pay rent per the terms of the lease. So HUD is trying to push that information out through their channels to residents of public housing. So we're undertaking those efforts, but Tim, I think your point is a good one, and there could probably be more effort on our part to make sure we get that information out there as widely as possible.
Thank you, Lisa.
This is George Perez, if I could say something, and not to overkill the topic. I think it's a good point, but I think and for instance, at the Department of Banking, we also going to put it in our website, because a lot of people come to us because they think that the landlord has a mortgage, and if they get a deferment in the mortgage, that means that they have to defer the rent the same way, which is not the case. But the point that we really need to address at some point is that there's going to be a percentage of people that no matter what we say, they're going to hear what they want to hear, which is, I don't have to pay the rent. And then there's going to be a percentage of people who heard it correctly and want to pay the rent, but not going to be able to pay that rent in 2 months from now. No different than the mortgagee that we give them a 3-month deferral or 6-month deferral. Month number 4, they're not going to be able to make 4 mortgage payments, or month number 7, they're not going to be able to make 8 mortgage payments. So there's going to be a percentage of people out there that no fault of theirs. They're either not going to be employed at the time because the world has changed, or they may not be working as many hours and making as much money. And it's going to create a tremendous burden and hardship for them and for the whole system. So besides educating people, we all have to, as public officials, really start facing the fact that there is going to be a percentage, hopefully small percentage, that even though they want to pay their rent, they're not going to be able to pay it right away.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Moving on the agenda, we have the results for the 2018 audit. Ronald Nossek from BlumShapiro is going to present the other results.
Okay, thank you and good morning. I'll go through the audit results presentation like I typically do with the board. In this case, I'll be a little bit more comprehensive simply because some of the communications that we typically make to the Finance and Audit Committee, clearly we haven't had the opportunity to sit with them as that meeting was canceled, originally scheduled earlier this morning. Most primarily here, relative to the audit results, as I think you all are aware, our objective as your external auditors is to express an opinion on the financial statements as of whether they fairly represent, in all material respects, the financial position and results of operations of the authority for the fiscal year ended 12/31/2019. So we have issued, under generally accepted auditing standards, we've issued an unmodified or clean audit opinion relative to those financial statements, stating that in our opinion they do fairly represent the financial position and results of operations of the authority for the fiscal year ended. We're also required to report to you under governmental auditing standards relative to any internal control matters or compliance matters that come to our attention relative to financial reporting aspects. So that basically relative to the accounting controls surrounding the accounting process, all of the processes that eventually roll up in your general ledger system and are used to produce financial statements. Relative to that report, there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that were identified during the performance of our procedures, and there were no compliance violations that were identified during the performance of our procedures that would have been needed to be disclosed in the financial statements. Finally, we also are required to report to you under uniform guidance of the Federal Single Audit Act and the State Single Audit Act, Connecticut State Single Audit Act. It's very similar in nature to the governmental auditing standards, with the exception that it focuses solely on the major federal or major state programs. But relative to the reporting, we would be required to report to you any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies relative to the control requirements over those federal and state programs, and then also report to you any instances of noncompliance relative to those programs. And like the governmental auditing standards reports, in both cases, federal single audit and state single audit, there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that were identified in the systems of controls, and there were no instances of noncompliance relative to the performance of those grants. So that basically wraps up all of the reporting results, if you will, from us relative to the financial statements and reports that were issued. Part 4 in this presentation are the audit areas that we focused on and a summary of the procedures and results that were performed. I'm not going to go through this area by area. You all can read it at your leisure. If you have any questions, you can circle back through management or reach out to us directly if you have any questions. What I will do is simply and quickly just convey to the entire board what we normally communicate with the Finance and Audit Committee and basically, process, if you will. So how this all rolls out is in December, typically, we come in and do preliminary audit work, which is typically transactional-based, internal control-based work. And after the performance of all of that, there's quite a few communications that are going on with management and staff at the authority. We come back, the audit team from BlumShapiro, and evaluate all of the information and communications that we've received over that time period. And then we perform a risk assessment at that point, which drives our audit procedures. That basically develops the audit plan. At that point, which is usually around January, we come to the Finance and Audit Committee with that audit plan to discuss what our plan is relative to the fiscal year and receive any input from them relative to areas of risk that are of concern to them or areas that perhaps where we highlight we're going to do some work or that may be basic in nature as opposed to extended in nature. We'll receive the feedback from that committee, and in all cases, to be quite honest, in the 4 years I've been involved with the authority, we have modified our procedures relative to communications that have come out of that committee. Once that's done, the audit plan is developed and finalized. But in the sense of the performance of the engagement itself, it is a very iterative process in that where we might address areas perhaps in an extended task, performing extended procedures, or even if it's basic procedures. Based on what we learn as we move along, things may change, and they often and always do. But in the end, we've got to accumulate all the information and evidence and conclude on it, which is the audit results that we talked about earlier. Finally, in that, on Section 5 of the document that we have are required communications to those charged with governance. This is under SAPS 114 of Generally Accepted Auditing Standards. And basically, the board also received a separate letter with all this information in it, but the basic drive of these required communications is to communicate to you if there were any instances that may reflect a bias on behalf of management relative to the presentation of the financial statements. Meaning, did we note that they were trying to make things look better or perhaps worse than what they actually are? So in all of these instances, if you read through this, there were no instances or any evidence that came to our attention that would cause us to believe that management was presenting anything other than the actual results for the fiscal year. The one thing that we did add into this, and I did discuss with Jim and Allison, is relative to and you're probably all aware of this, but relative to what is the planned obsolescence or termination of the use of LIBOR after 2021. LIBOR is an attribute that I think is basically embedded in virtually all of your swaps, and really the risk is if it were to terminate without there being a plan in place prior to the termination, the effectiveness calculation that you perform on your swaps would basically go away. They would all be deemed to be ineffective, and thus your operating statement would get hit with either the gain or loss relative to those swaps. In my discussions with Azim, there is a rather comprehensive plan that management has already undertaken. They certainly were fully aware of this. The only reason that we bring this to your attention, it isn't because we feel as though it's a weakness or something that isn't being addressed. It's simply the reality of the fact, and not so much because of what we're all dealing with today, but in all cases, if management were to leave, the folks that are in place that are in the process of performing these, the tasks that they're undertaking relative to this LIBOR issue, the knowledge of the fact that it's terminating may go away. So from our perspective, we felt as though and feel as though it's important to communicate to you, the board, relative to this matter, so that if something were to transpire with management, the knowledge of this is embedded in the board, and you could communicate to whatever new management you may be dealing with down the road. I don't expect and hope that nothing of that nature transpires, but I just wanted to make clear as to the reason why we communicated this to you in this current year. So that is all I was going to talk about. I'm more than happy to take any questions from anyone at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronald. Any questions about the audit of 2019?
Yeah, this is George Perez. I have two questions.
Go ahead.
Well, actually, a request and a question. The request is, I'm sure that, like it was mentioned, the team is doing that analysis. I would appreciate it if you could share that with the board, or at least minimum with the finance committee, so we could get a better feel for what the potential impact on the financials may be, if there is any impact. The LIBOR analysis.
Azim,
yes.
Can you share that?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
And then my question is, doing your pre-work, the auditors always meet with the finance committee and the board and ask for, let us know what you're going to be doing when we do the engagement letter, and ask for anything that we should let you know, or anything that we would like, that we're concerned about, that you would look at. And there was a topic, and it had to do with the situation that we're going through, where we had an employee who was also monitoring the work of a relative, i.e. her own husband. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail in this conversation. But my question is, did you look at that situation? And then if you did, I really would like to request that some future finance committee meeting, especially when we're back in person, and that we have a discussion about that topic.
Okay, yeah, we actually, if I don't know who's controlling the screen, but if you roll up,
I don't have it on the screen, so I won't be able to see it. But I do have it. I do have my iPad, so if you could direct me to the page, because I was looking for that last night, I couldn't see it.
Okay, if for those who are looking, if you roll up that screen to the very last box relative to procedures, so right before the required communication, right there, okay. So these other procedures performed, and I know this is certainly not a deep dive into what exactly we did. It was more meant to provide to the Finance and Audit Committee the fact that what was brought to our attention during the planning meeting was addressed in the performance of our audit. So yeah, what we did was we did both compliance and control testing relative to that program to ensure that the loans that were being made during that period of time were properly approved and met all of the qualifications relative to the program. So I can certainly share in far more depth what exactly we did. I can actually share with you the transactions that we tested if you so care to learn all of that.
I saw that box, but that did not answer my question. My question was not so much about the approval. It was once we approved it, it was the management of it, because that's what the flow was. And that's where potentially caused the problem that we did, where we had a developer who didn't perform the work, got money, and now we're trying to collect. So, again, I don't want to tie up this meeting with this. But as members of the board, we have the fiduciary responsibility to make sure that when an issue is brought up to our attention, that it has been addressed. And I really would like to understand better, and not so much the approval process, but once it's approved, the management, whatever you call it, the oversight. Like, for instance, we went and visited the wrong building. How in the world you go and visit the wrong building, to do an inspection? Obviously, it happened, but I want to know if you look at those kind of procedures, and if there's any recommendations, and if not, and then we have to bring it back. I really want that to be done, because we've been having way too many issues with quasi-entities in the state, and I'm not going to be around and know that there's a problem and we haven't addressed it.
So,
and I'm not saying we haven't, I would like the independent auditor to look at it.
So, Commissioner, if we can bring that topic to the Finance Committee, as in Nandini, if you can bring it with chairs and have a conversation in the Finance Committee.
Sure,
absolutely.
But I want to be in record saying that that's what I expected is part of this audit was going to look at, and I still expect to get a report on that.
So on the 2019, you would like to hear a report on that particular issue at the next Finance Committee. Will that work, Commissioner?
Yes, that's fine. And we can wait until we go back to so-called normal, unless there's an urgency to do it sooner.
Okay, so Nandini, did you have that on your agenda?
Yeah, I do. Will do.
Ronald, did you guys issue a management letter?
We would under circumstances where recommendations were necessary, but there was nothing other than the LIBOR issue that came up. And again, but from our perspective, it wasn't an indication of a weakness or a lack of action. It simply was the matter of us wanting to bring that to your attention.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the auditor? Okay, so we're going to move on. Thank you very much for all your work. We have 3 transactions that we need to that we have resolution for, and I'm going to ask the first is Maplewood Court from Bridgeport. Debbie Alter, do you want to report on that?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Maplewood Court is a property that is already in CHFA's portfolio. This request is for tax-exempt bond proceeds for a construction-only first mortgage up to $3.8 million with a maximum term of 30 months, interest only at a rate up to 4%, as well as assignment, assumption, and restructure of the current loan in the approximate amount of $814,500, interest only at 3% for a term of up to 30 months, converting to a fully amortizing permanent loan at 3% for 30 years. The borrower is Mutual Housing of Southwestern Connecticut. They do business as Connecticut Housing Partners, and I will refer to them as CHP for this presentation. CHP also serves as the property management company. The property consists of 2 historic former school buildings converted to housing in 1996. It contains 32 affordable apartments for families. This application was originally received in December of 2013 as part of the CHFA round of DOH funding. It was approved by the CHFA board in March of 2014. Turnover on the development team caused delays, and they were not able to achieve a closing before the commitment expired. It was approved again by the CHFA board in September of 2015. Progress was being made toward a closing, but the transaction was put on hold in June of 2016 following complaints made to the CHFA board by residents of another CHP property, Parkside Gables in Stamford. This property is a mutual housing model property, which means that residents become members of a corporation and they are supposed to participate in the management of that corporation. These residents felt that they did not have adequate input into the property. So CHP worked to resolve this, and as that was going on, CHFA asked them to obtain a development partner for the Maplewood transaction. CHP approached many possible partners, but was not able to come to an agreement with anybody. The issues at Parkside Gables were eventually resolved by creating a resident council, and focus was returned to moving the Maplewood rehabilitation forward. This property suffers from deferred maintenance. It experiences flooding and heavy rain events, and 8 units have been offline due to flooding since 2011. An additional 8 units are currently offline awaiting refurbishment. Having so many units offline has led to operating deficits for the past several years. All units in the property are affordable to households earning up to 60% of the area median income. 8 units will receive Section 8 rental subsidy, and at least 4 units will receive rental subsidies under the Father Panic Settlement Agreement. Father Panic Village was a public housing development that was demolished in the late 1980s, and a class action lawsuit settlement required a 1-for-1 replacement of all 1,063 units. HUD does provide funding for rental subsidies for these replacement units. The property currently has 8 of these units, but the Housing Authority is contemplating moving 4 of those subsidies to a new development. If those subsidies are lost, the units will become tax credit properties and cash flow will not be negatively affected. Sources of construction funding include low-income housing tax credit equity, federal and state historic tax credit equity, previously awarded HTCC funds, deferred developer fee. DOH is providing National Housing Trust Fund and a CHFA funds that were approved by the Bond Commission in 2016. This development was granted several moratoria on payment from CHFA between July of 2011 and July of 2016. So the CHFA new first mortgage amount does include $114,500 in deferred interest from this time period. Payments have been made as agreed on the loan since July of 2016. There are challenges to this transaction, but there are many mitigating factors. Upon completion of the rehabilitation, CHFA's collateral will be in a much better condition than it is now. The quality of life will be improved for the current residents, and putting all the units back online will position the property for positive cash flow going forward. CHFA asset management staff holds quarterly phone calls with CHP's property management staff and will continue to monitor their performance. Since this loan is currently in CHFA's portfolio, the main risk is in payoff of the construction loan. Historic tax equity accounts for about 40% of the funds needed to pay off the construction loan. CHFA Technical Services staff works very closely with staff from the State Historic Preservation Office to ensure that all of SHPO's guidelines are incorporated into the scope of work. The balance of funds for paying off the construction loan will come from DOH and from low-income housing tax credit equity. The tax credit syndicator, Redstone, has remained committed to the transaction, and Redstone's proposed developer fee payment schedule provides an incentive for the development to be completed in a satisfactory and in a timely manner. Along with CHFA's typical closing conditions, we have added a few other conditions that will be required prior to closing. These include CHFA review and approval of the plan for tenant relocation during construction, since this is an occupied property, release or subordination of any outstanding subordinate debt to the City of Bridgeport or the City of Bridgeport Housing Authority, CHFA acceptance of an action plan with respect to the operation of this property. CHFA will reserve the right to require an annual management review to assess performance, and also reserve the right to replace the management agent if necessary. And CHFA will require its review and approval prior to payment of the final installment of developer fee following cost certification, at least 3 months of break-even debt service coverage, and receipt of all the equity required to pay CHFA's construction loan in full. Despite concerns with CHFA's capacity as an owner and manager, it is important to move forward with this rehabilitation for the sake of the current residents, to add the uninhabitable units back to the inventory of affordable housing, and to position the CHFA asset for positive cash flow. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Deb. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved by Ann Foley.
May I have a second?
Second, Carla Weil.
Thank you. Any discussion? Questions?
These are going to be fixed-rate bonds, correct? Sherry Abrahams.
Yes. Deb?
Hazim, do you want to answer that?
Yes, it is.
Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to do a roll call vote. Shelley, could you please do that?
Yes. Jerry Abraham?
Aye.
Wendy Clark? Heidi DeWinger?
Aye.
Ann Foley?
Aye.
Kylie Gosselin?
Aye.
Tim Hodges?
Abstain.
Catherine McKinnon?
Aye.
Ayla Mascara-Bruno?
Aye.
George Perez?
Yes.
Franklin Perry?
Yes.
Sarah Sanders?
Aye.
Jared Schmidt? Lisa Pepper Bates?
Aye.
Gwendolyn Thames?
Aye.
Carla Weil?
Aye.
One abstention.
Motion carries. Next is Rocknet Village, East Lyme Mortgage Financing. Carol?
She's on mute.
Carol?
Carol?
She's talking, but she's on mute.
Carol, you may have to, did you join the conference line?
Okay, can somebody take over for Carol? Because we don't have all day, so let's...
All right, this is Jennifer. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take over for Carol. So the proposed Rocky Neck Village development will increase the supply of affordable housing and expand housing choice in southwestern Connecticut. Staff is seeking authorization to approve first mortgage financing an amount up to $13,700,000, structured as 2 notes, including 1 construction mortgage loan of approximately $11,500,000 with a maximum term of 24 months at an interest rate of 3.75%, and a construction to permanent loan of approximately $2.2 million at an interest rate of 3.75%. with a construction term of 24 months and a maximum permanent term of 35 years to Niantic Partners. Rocky Neck Village is the proposed new construction of 56 three-bedroom apartments in 9 buildings on a vacant, undeveloped, wooded 24-acre parcel. A 10th building will house office space for the property manager and an on-site resident services coordinator, a community facility that will include a computer lab. There are 50 affordable apartments. 13 are targeted to families at or below 25% AMI. 23 apartments are targeted for families at or below 50% AMI, and 14 apartments are targeted for families at or below 80% AMI. The DOH financing was reduced for all applicants in the 2019 LIHTC round. Consequently, CHFA issued an invitation to all applicants in the 2019 LIHTC round to apply for special development targeted financing, and the applicant applied for construction and permanent financing from CHFA. The DOH financing for this development was reduced by $800,000, creating a gap. The proposed permanent loan from CHFA will close this gap, fund an increase of hard construction costs of approximately $683,000, as well as costs related to CHFA's financing, including an operating reserve in the amount of approximately $388,000. The development was successful in the LIHTC round because it will achieve several housing development policy priorities, which were identified in the QAP. The development is located in East Lyme, where there is less than 10% housing is assisted and deed restricted. It is located in an area of opportunity with above average performing schools, below average poverty rate, above average jobs to population ratio, and access to higher education. The development promotes economic integration with a unit mix that will include 6 market rate apartments. 12 apartments are set aside for homeless families. The economic model developed by DECD projects that the development of the project will generate approximately $28 million of new economic activity and 70 new jobs. The development is in a transit-oriented development, and it is mixed income and located less than 1/2 mile from a local transit bus stop. The development is designed to passive housing standards to achieve energy efficiency measures that will generate utility cost savings. The proposal does present the following challenges. The 2019 LIHTC reservation for Rocky Neck Village includes as a requirement CHFA's acceptance of a cost certification and issuance of 8609 for Cherry Apartments, which was developed by the developer for Rocky Neck Village and was previously awarded 9% LIHTC in 2016. Substantial cost overruns for Cherry Apartments were incurred due to unforeseen environmental remediation resulting from a delay to satisfy the conditions. The cost overruns were funded with developer fee and the short-term construction loan from the tax credit syndicator. The developer and syndicator were working to identify sources to repay the short-term loan and the developer fee. Cherry Apartments is fully occupied and operations are sustainable. An acceptable cost certification for Cherry Apartments is a prerequisite to CHFA's issuance of 8609. The cost certification is underway and is due to CHFA within the next 30 days. An acceptable cost certification will be a condition of initial closing for Rocky Neck Village. The market study confirms that the proposed development is approximately supported by potential income-qualified tenants at a scheduled rental rate. The report projects an absorption period of 4 months for the apartments targeted for families at 25% AMI, 80% AMI, and the market rate apartments. However, the projected absorption period for the apartments targeted at families at 50% of the AMI is over 6 months, as there is an existing supply of markets that can compete for the development. The source of repayment for the CHFA construction mortgage is LIHTC equity. Some mitigating construction mitigating factors. The risk of the cost overruns for unforeseen environmental conditions for Rocky Neck Village is extremely low because the Phase 1 environmental assessment report identified no areas of concern or hazardous materials. The development budget includes debt service payments for a period of 18 months to mitigate the risk of the delay in lease-up if the absorption periods for the apartments targeted to 50% of the AMI exceeds 6 months. The budget includes a lease-up reserve of $55,000, which equates to approximately 6 months of debt service payments to the permanent loan. The term of the construction loan is 24 months, and the construction period is 12 months. Therefore, there is a 12-month period for the development to achieve lease-up, during which time the interest-only debt service payments for the construction loan are incorporated into the development budget. The 6-month lease-up reserve for the permanent loan and the 12 months of budgeted debt service for the construction loan provide debt service coverage for a total of 18 months to achieve sustainable occupancy. The risk payoff is moderate as conditions to release the LIHTC equity contribution payoff, which is paid directly by CHFA, include the certificate of occupancy, 90% occupancy, and the final cost certification, all of which are standard pay down conditions that staff believes are achievable. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Jennifer. May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Move.
So moved by Ian Foley.
Second, it's Ken.
Ken, have a second. Any discussion, questions for Jennifer? Okay, Shelley, can we do the roll call?
Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Wendy Clark, Heidi DeLunger,
Aye.
Ann Foley,
Aye.
Kelly Goslin,
Aye.
Tim Hodges,
Aye.
Catherine McKinnon,
Aye.
Ayla Mascara-Bruno,
Yes.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
Gary Schmidt, able to be joined, Lisa Pepper Bates,
Aye.
Glenda Limpane,
Aye.
Carla Weil,
Aye.
unanimous.
Motion carries. Thank you. Windward Apartments in Bridgeport, modification of mortgage financing. Joe, you're going to present this one?
Yes, thank you. The movement before you is the amendment of the board's prior authorization for PAP funds. Some of you were not present when this was approved back in November, but I'll give you a very brief update. This was originally a 2017 tax credit proposal. It experienced a budget shortfall with years ago. We worked with the developer to try to mitigate some of those cost issues, and we provided a return exchange of credit last year to try to make this project proceed. To mitigate that gap, it simply eliminated one building from the project. But the unintended consequence was that the project then exceeded $30,000 per unit in the tax credit allocation. So we reduced the amount of the tax credit allocation. The resulting gap was filled by the staff funding that CHFA provided. We provided the approval back in November with a 30-year permanent term to the loan. After the approval, the developer and their investor partner requested that we modify the term to 40 years to be consistent with the balance of the financing. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Joe. May I have a motion to approve this modification?
So moved. This is Lisa.
What's that?
I'll second.
Lisa and Ann. Okay. Shelley, you got that? Any discussions, any questions for Joe? Okay, Shelley.
Roll call. Jerry
Yep.
Abrams.
Aye.
Clark, not here. Heidi Winger.
Aye.
Nick Foley.
Aye.
Sally Goslin.
Aye.
Tim Hodges.
Aye.
Dr. McKinnon.
Aye.
Ella Mascara-Bruno.
Yes.
George Perez.
Yes.
Franklin Perry.
Yep.
Sarah Sanders.
Aye.
Lisa Pepper Bates.
Aye.
Gwendolyn Thames.
Aye.
Carla Weil.
Aye.
Agnes.
Motion carries. Thank you. And Nandini is going to present the immediate and temporary financial accommodations for the housing mortgage program. We heard from many of our property owners that they needed some assistance. So Nandini is going to present a resolution slash program that she and her staff have been working on. Go ahead, Nandini.
Thank you. So good morning again. So as the Commissioner said, we reached out to the development community and said, basically reach out to CHFA if you're anticipating having problems, with renters who may be experiencing unemployment or underemployment or health issues. And we heard from a number of our borrowers. So today I present to you a resolution that authorizes the executive director to grant mortgage loan principal and interest forbearance for selected multifamily developments for a period of up to 90 days for payments due on April 1 or thereafter. So in short, we anticipate that a significant number of multifamily developments will experience financial hardship beyond their control or ability to correct or mitigate. The reason we're asking for a delegation from the board is because we expect there to be a large number of these requests coming in daily, and we think it would be more efficient for the staff with executive director oversight to handle some of those requests and provide certain efficiencies. Staff has been working really hard to figure out the best way that we can provide immediate relief from payment, but keeping in mind that analysis of the facts and circumstances surrounding a request for forbearance must also occur in order for us to be, good fiduciaries of the resources. So what's being proposed basically is upon written request for forbearance from a mortgagor, we will grant an immediate 30-day loan forbearance to start, from the period that they either requested or the period that makes sense in terms of the next payment due, provided that the loan was current in the month prior to the start of the forbearance. And what we're trying to do here is help those truly impacted as a result of the crisis, and that is one way that we feel that we can create a metric that allows us to do that. Upon initial approval, which is this initial 30 days like I just mentioned, we will provide the applicant with an electronic application for forbearance. It's a one-page application. It basically asks some questions as well as requests certain supporting documentation. And all of that is due within 10 days of the approval, of the initial approval of the 30-day forbearance. Once we get that information and it's complete, we will get to work analyzing it. Analyzing the application, analyzing the backup, and what you're granting me the ability to do today, hopefully, is to provide up to an additional 60 days of forbearance, if it is warranted. And if it is not warranted, so I'm going to go into that in a minute, we may not recommend any further action by the authority at that point. So when I say warranted, what do I mean? There are, developments are all over the place in terms of their need. Definitely, there's going to be a need for a significant number of them, but, some developments may have reserves, some may have residual receipts that they could tap into. There may be deferred developer fee accounts that have funds in them. There could be rental assistance subsidies, Section 8 subsidies, in some cases where those developments may not actually suffer any losses as a result of HUD's actions. So in essence, we're going to look at the whole picture, and once we look at the whole picture, we will make a determination about whether an additional 60 days is warranted. The mortgagor will enter into a forbearance agreement that will lay out the terms and conditions, including a reasonable repayment plan and requirements to abide by, which will include all federal and state laws, all executive orders issued by the governor. For example, no evictions during the forbearance period, solely for the non-payment of rent, no late fees for the non-payment of rent or late payment of rent, etc. And what we will come back to you with every month from here on out is a report that will provide to you the list of properties that has been given forbearance, the amount of forbearance, the period of the forbearance, and our recommendation as to whether the forbearance should be extended and for what period of time. This authorization is effective until June 30th, meaning that I can grant, if you approve this today, I will be able to grant forbearances all the way through June 30th, or if the public emergency has ended, then, this authorization would lapse as well. So before I hand it off for questions, I wanted to show you the list of properties. You might not be able to see it if you're not looking at the GoToMeeting, but Shelley has up here the list of properties that have requested forbearance, and we have taken a look at them, and we have basically said, provided the board approves this today, we're willing to give them a 1-month forbearance, and then we would ask them to come back to us with the supporting documentation that would allow us to evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nandini. Before the questions, let's go through the motion. May I have a motion for this resolution?
Move.
Second.
Jim Hodges.
That was the motion.
I second Jerry Abraham.
Discussion, questions.
This is George. I have a quick question.
Yes.
I have no problem delegating authority because I understand the challenges and the timing. But I'm concerned that this is not done unless not only their need, but also that the developer is in compliance with all the other requirements of the law. Meaning, if they're supposed to provide us with rent roll, they've done that. If they're supposed to have given us financial statements, they've done that. All the other requirements of the loan/tax credit, whatever the financial mechanism we use, has been met. Do I make sense?
Yes. Nandini, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, I can give it a go. I mean, I think what you're talking about is sort of like technical noncompliance with the other programs and requirements that the authority may have in place. I think the way we envisioned it was that this resolution would supersede any of those other noncompliance to the extent that it's not in relation to this particular property. I think, we would continue to provide forbearance as long as it was warranted on a financial basis. If that is not acceptable, then, I think we would want to discuss that.
I thought you were going to say that, and I strongly believe that no one should get any special privilege or any special accommodation if they cannot meet a contract. If the contract requires them to provide us with tax returns and they haven't done that, they will have to provide us with tax returns if we're going to give them any relief. If not, we take over the property and hire somebody else who's going to do it. But we should not take what we would consider in the banking world a trouble debt, because it is a trouble debt when you don't meet the covenants of your loan, and then give somebody a benefit. If they can get them to comply when they need us, we're never going to get them to comply, but they don't need us.
Exactly, and I think, Nandini, I think you mentioned that they need to be in compliance. They need to have paid the month before the forbearance, and also there will be the way that they're going to do. You're going to be looking at transaction by transaction, because they're going to receive payrolls and they're going to request financial information.
Absolutely. So to put your mind at ease, there's going to be a level of financial compliance that has to be met, right? And that's true because we're not going to even let them in the door if they're delinquent in making loan payments. I think what the commissioner is concerned about, what the commissioner is concerned about is more on the non-financial compliance related stuff. If they've not provided certain documentation, if there's other items of non-compliance on the tax credit administration side, how does that affect their ability to get forbearance under this program?
Nandini, this is Masuda. Can I?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. Chime in.
Tim, let me see if I can answer your question. So, as what Nandini was saying initially, our goal is to be responsive to the customer. So, by giving them 30-day forbearance, all that means is we're forbearing that particular payment, and then from there we're sending an application checklist. They will have to provide us with due diligence documents, financials, rent rolls, any information that we need in order to evaluate and assess that request. So as part of that, we will be doing due diligence. In the event we discover, first of all, that this is not related to COVID, then, that 30-day forbearance is then reversed, and then they will enter into a formal forbearance agreement. So we can certainly add additional parameters. But that process is factored into the evaluation that CHFA will be performing after the initial 30-day review, or after that 30-day forbearance is granted.
I appreciate the clarification, because that's not what I heard originally, or when the executive director spoke. But I'm still not clear that you guys are getting my point. I want to be real clear. We should not do any forbearance for anyone that's in violation of the loan documents and the tax credit that we give them. In fact, if we don't enforce that, we're in violation of what we represent to the investors. If there's a requirement that they have to provide us financial statements on a yearly basis, and they haven't done that for the last year or the last 2 years, they need to do that. That's not difficult. They should be doing that. That's part of the contract. And all I'm saying is that before we give them any forbearance, putting aside COVID-19, they should be up to date with the non-financial requirements of their loan or the tax credit. That's not an unreasonable request. And if they're not, it should be already in some sort of management or some sort of overview or some sort of oversight. But if not, then we're not doing our work. So I'm not thinking that we should be doing every day.
Nandini, it's Tim Hodges. What's we can clearly hear George's frustration. I guess I'm trying to understand what your hesitation is. I mean, do we have?
No, there is none. No, we can definitely add that.
So the answer should be yes. We'll make sure they're compliant.
Sure.
So, Commissioner, that's the answer. Yes, you guys, Nandini and Masuda and Hazim, you guys are going to make sure that the people or the deals that are going to be applying for are in compliance before you start giving them the forbearance.
Can I just press a little bit though, because what I try to rely on is I have faith in staff, right? And so I hear some hesitation. Is there any hesitation, or is there some concerns around what George is asking for? I mean, if you're suggesting if there's a suggestion that, look, we're going to have to go and look through every single file, and if they've missed one minor piece, we're not going to give them the forbearance. I'm not really I'm wondering if there should be some flexibility as opposed to George's rigid, if they're not in compliance in any way, they can't get a 30-day waiver.
So here's the thing. I have no hesitation.
You give them 10 days to comply. So give them 10 days to comply. Getting a copy of tax returns should not take 10 days.
Okay.
So,
I'm
so very well.
So, yeah,
I will never tolerate this. Then, if you have
I don't disagree. I'm not completely disagreeing with you. I'm just going to be thoughtful.
Okay.
So I think what we will do is I have no hesitation whatsoever. I was trying to understand the question earlier, but now that I do, I totally understand your concern. What I will say is that materiality is going to be something that you're going to have to trust or delegate to me to determine, because if it is one financial statement that was missed years ago and then they made it up and have been regular ever since, then that to me is not a material, right? I mean,
that's not non-compliant. They comply.
Well, I'm just telling you that there may be small things that, if they're not material, we're going to have to look at those, right? And we'll do our diligence and
well, it depends how you define non-material. If going to visit a wrong building is not material, then we have different definition of material. But in this case, if they didn't do something 2 years ago and you brought it to their attention and they comply with it, they're in compliance. As far as I'm concerned, that's not
very good.
Compliant.
Okay, that's good.
But if they have not
we agree.
the last 2 years or the last year, that's not in compliance. And that's what the documents require. And that's what we assured investors of the tax credits we were going to do. And we were going to make sure they comply with the regulations of the program. We owe that to the investors.
Okay. Totally agree.
Another question.
Yeah, Jerry Abrams, I have a question. A question and a comment to sort of further this point. It would probably be, it seems to me, best practice that Nandini, if you actually, prior to conducting your evaluations, promulgate some set of criteria that you're going to apply, so that if we are going to delegate you, they provide sort of delegate authority to do this, that you actually, have a set criteria that you're going to apply as you look at this. And the second question, as you look at the effect that this is going to have on Chief of Finances, and what the potential impact of that will be.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Hazim in a second, but I'm gonna say that the answer to that really depends on the length and depth of this, the relief efforts. So if it's a couple of months and it's, a few properties, then obviously it's not going to be as deep. So I'll turn it over to Hazim, who might be able to answer that with a little bit more precision.
Sure. Good morning, Jerry. So, when this whole thing happened, of course, one of the things that we were concerned about is the size. How many, projects will be seeking forbearance. And also even on the single-family side, because, we are running two programs, but both programs do impact our financial and income statement directly. And the second point is, Nandini already mentioned it, is on the length of time. Because as we were dealing with COVID-19, we were getting various orders, regulators telling us to do one way or the other. And we were trying to figure out how best to define it. So what we have done, at least from the analysis standpoint, was to stress the balance sheet by assuming that at least 20% of the portfolio, both sides on the single-family and multifamily, will be seeking forbearance for a period of 3 months. And when we did that, what would happen is it would reduce our projected ICA, and ICA for you, Jerry, means is our retained earnings. It will reduce our retained earnings by about $6 million. Now, this assumes that everything else is being constant, meaning that We're not going to see a pickup in delinquency. We're not going to see a pickup in losses on the multifamily side. So there's so many variables, but that's literally what we have done. So if the size of forbearance goes higher than 20, then of course it's going to impact the number. If it's going to be longer than 3 months, that's going to impact the number. But just going back to this particular request, at least what we know so far, we have 20 projects plus 1 CFI that have requested some form of a forbearance. Of that 20 projects, that consists of 30 loans. Of those loans, when we break it down between bond loans and other assets within indenture, that represents less than 4% of the multifamily portfolio. So we are definitely under the stress level.
Right. So that makes sense. So if you're in your disclosure of the forbearance agreements that you provide, the forbearance you provide, will you include the estimated impact on ITA?
We can do that, but it's a moving target, as you know, because this is what we know today. So by the time we get to the following month, the number may change. But yeah, we can provide the estimate based on what we know so far.
Thank you.
Azim, instead of providing the ITA, you could provide an estimate of the principal and interest, right? I mean, isn't that sort of?
Yeah, we can provide whichever. So that's the challenge about doing this analysis. So on the single family side, even though we didn't touch on it, I just want to at least provide some color to board members. We did get some reports from our major services. We are running right now about 6.7% on a weighted basis of individuals that have requested forbearance. So that represents over 1,000 homeowners out of 14,000 loans that we have, at least on the home loan side. So that's just to provide you the scope. So 6.7 is trending higher than what Black Knight, which is the major servicer, and the national average. So this is something that we're just monitoring and to see. So based on that particular snapshot, depending on how it goes, the number will just get adjusted.
Nandini and Chair, I just want to comment quickly. I really appreciate the hard work that you and the staff have done on this. And at the risk of stating the obvious, this has a not insignificant connection with regard to how we manage the continuing public health crisis. It's really of paramount importance that we remember that for the foreseeable future, we have to do whatever we can to ensure that we are not sending more people into eviction and homelessness. All of these pieces are connected, but this is in large part why the governor, in the executive order, introduced the forbearance on eviction, because of that connection to the public health emergency that we're managing. The more people that end up in a condition of homelessness and in shelters where the quarters are just too tight to manage, the more we increase the risk in this public health emergency. So it's really important, obviously, as you've done, to do the due diligence and as Jerry and George noted, to be really careful about the balance sheet. But it's also important to remember this extraordinary moment in time and our part in that. So thank you.
I totally agree with that, but I also remind people that we can't help people if we're not around to help them.
Thank you.
Now, having said that, in the same spirit of what Lisa was saying, I like the fact that it was mentioned that part of the condition was that there will be no eviction as per the governor's executive order. But the governor's executive order does not prohibit evictions after the declaration of the crisis is over. So what I would like to throw out there is, going back to my original comment, that if a developer gets forbearance, gets a benefit from us, the part of the deal should be that if they have a legitimate situation with somebody, not that's trying not to pay the rent because they don't want to pay the rent, but somebody who loves their job, that they will also enter into an agreement, a repayment plan with that tenant, meaning that they won't kick them out after the second order has expired.
So noted.
So this way, they get something from us, the tenant gets something from them too. And I want to say the tenant shouldn't pay the rent, meaning to enter into a payment plan.
Okay. Moving along, do we have any other questions from any other board member? Okay, let's do the roll call, Shelley, please.
Gary Abrahams?
Aye.
Cindy Clark?
Yes.
Heidi Dewinter?
Aye.
Ken Foley?
Aye.
Allie Goslin?
Aye.
Tim Hodges?
Aye.
Esther McKinnon?
Aye.
Mayla Mascara-Bruno?
Aye.
George Perez?
Yes.
Franklin Perry?
Aye.
Sarah Sanders?
Aye.
Pepper Bates?
Aye.
Something?
Gwendolyn had to hop off. She had an 11 o'clock call.
Carla Wild?
Abstain?
One abstention and one not present.
Motion carries. Our consent agenda, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Heidi.
This is George Perez, second it.
Any discussion? Roll call, Shelley.
Gary Abrams?
Aye.
Heidi Dewinter?
Aye.
Ken Foley?
Aye.
Allie Goslin?
Aye.
Tim Hodges?
Aye.
Esther McKinnon?
Aye.
Mayla Mascara-Bruno?
Aye.
George Perez?
Yes.
Franklin Perry?
Aye.
Sarah Sanders?
Aye.
Pepper Bates?
Aye.
Carla Wild?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Our motion carries. The last item on our agenda is a report from has been on the 2023 EOM sale.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. We are giving the board this update because we thought it would be beneficial for the members to hear the impact of COVID-19 on the financial market. Last month, the board gave its approval for CHFA to issue $150 million of bonds to finance single-family programs. Upon receiving the approval, and in a normal market environment, we would issue a prospectus or a preliminary official statement to solicit interest from investors. From there, and based on investors' feedback, our lead manager, Bank of America, would identify and advise CHFA on the appropriate levels of interest rates for 1-year maturity till 30-year maturity. Suffice to say, we are not in a normal market environment. Since the beginning of March, there has been a dislocation in the bond market between tax-exempt rate and taxable rate. Normally, the ratio is about 80 to 90%. What this means is if the taxable rate was 1%, the tax-exempt rate will be around 0.8% to 0.9%. Over the last several weeks, we saw the ratio jump all over the place and as high as 355% for a 30-year bond. Last week, the same ratio was about 206%. This meant while the taxable market saw a drop in rate, the tax-exempt market has not been experiencing the same drop. had CHFA issued the bond based on its original schedule or April 21, we would have ended up with a bond yield of about 2.5% instead of 2% or less in a normal setting. Due to the market dislocation, CHFA will now be issuing a taxable bond that will be directly placed with RBC for a term of 1 year at a rate of 1.5% based on the most recent indication. We selected RBC over 4 other large financial institutions due to its terms being the most favorable to CHFA. We'll also be lowering the issuance amount to $75 million to account for a slowdown in the home buying space. By issuing the bond directly, it will allow CHFA to raise the proceeds that it needs, issue the bond before May 15 so that it could preserve bond volume cap, buy time, which allow the tax-exempt bond market to stabilize, and finally take advantage of a very competitive all-in rate. Additionally, the bond will be redeemable prior to maturity without penalty at any time, and once redeemed, it will be refunded with tax-exempt bond. The closing for the bond will remain the same for the original schedule on May 12th. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have at this time.
Any questions for Hazim? Great. Thank you, Hazim.
Thank you.
I just want to thank staff at the CHFA. They have been working diligent. I have been in meetings every week with all of them. So I thank you very much for all your help. I know COVID-19 just put us in a whole different world, and no matter what, the agency still continues providing the services, and we are going to continue the work even for those projects that are closing and construction continues on, because we need those units. So with that, I would like to have a motion to adjourn, and we can just, if somebody is not in agreement, can say no, but otherwise everybody just say yes at the same time.
Move, Tim.
Move. Aye.
Go again.
Aye.
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 Thanks, Ayla. Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
Hi, Rod.
Thank you, Shelley.